fraudulent first election. Get the first one right first.
Arizona's Attorney General is siding with state lawmakers. They want an audit of ballots as well as counting equipment and software. But the county's Board of Supervisors won't comply.
Arizona's Attorney General agrees with state lawmakers calling for audits on ballots and equipment used in the election. Mark Brnovich weighed in on an ongoing case in the Maricopa County Superior Court. In the court battle, the county's Board of Supervisors are refusing to comply with subpoenas to produce materials from the November 3rd election. It includes scans of mail-in ballots and images from voting machines. County officials are seeking judgment from a court about whether the subpoenas are lawful. Arizona senators filed a countersuit to enforce the subpoenas, which the court dismissed. Brnovich says the U.S. Constitution gives power to state lawmakers to make laws to protect election integrity, and the materials they've requested will allow them to do that better.
And in Georgia, the Senate subcommittee passed a motion to request Fulton County to give them access to ballots that were counted without supervision. Senator Ligon and Rudy Giuliani told NTD if they can inspect those ballots, they will have the hard evidence needed to make big changes in Georgia. NTD's Melina Wisecup reports.
The message here is simple. Chairman of the subcommittee, Senator Ligon, is really urging the legislators to convene so that they can assess this election fraud and find out if they in fact have enough evidence to elect their own slate of electors.
That the legislature could do this, and it's a tool that we have, and I think that we need to pick it up and use it and conduct these investigations to get to the bottom of it.
While Rudy Giuliani is saying that he thinks it's likely that they can get done what they need to get done in order to ensure that the lawful president is in fact sworn in.
The Secretary of State, who's engaged in a massive cover-up, says this was the cleanest election in history. But he will not allow us to examine a single ballot, and he won't allow us to examine a single machine. If he's so sure it's clean, why wouldn't he let us look at those ballots, look at those machines? Because he knows the minute we start looking at them, this election blows up. That's the best evidence that this is a cover-up. He is refusing to allow us to examine the machines, the Dominion machines, and he's refusing to allow us. Today they threw out the guy who came here to examine 30,000 ballots. He won't let us look at the paper because he knows there's a lot of phony paper.
And a big key to getting more hard evidence is for them to get their hands on the machines as well as on the physical ballots so that they can do a thorough investigation on both the machines and the ballots themselves.
We need the spoiled ballots, which are the ones that were rejected by the machine, and then we need the adjudicated ballots on just the absentee ballots. They're the ones that were mailed. We can then do an analysis and determine what ballots are counterfeit. There have been lawsuits filed to seek access. Fulton County has objected to those lawsuits, not allowing access. We had people in Atlanta today at the center where the ballots are held, ready to scan the ballots today in response to an open records request. We were denied access by Fulton County today.
So he's a lawyer that's really involved in the situation here in Georgia as well as in other states. The lawyer says there is no basis for them objecting to them going in and doing this audit on these ballots other than just simply running out the clock. So Mr. Pulitzer has created technology that can scan ballots and actually see what kind of paper was used, how were the folds, and also what kind of ink was used.
And so in all of this process we look at it, it just happens some other things come up. We can tell, is that even the right ballot? Is that even the right paper? Is it paper from the United States of America, which is required by law when it comes to a ballot?
Donald Trump probably won this state by 40 or 50,000 votes or more. And we can prove that if he shows us the paper. And that's why he's holding it back.
Giuliani just called this a test of courage for these officials who have the power to get this done. He says it's up to them whether or not they have the courage to do what's right and really take a hard look at what happened here in Georgia and make things right. Reporting in Atlanta, Georgia, Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
And the group who filed the lawsuit to inspect these ballots filed a motion to compel. That means they're asking the judge to order the Fulton County officials to give them the ballots so they can conduct the forensic inspection. Attorney Lynn Wood files an emergency petition at the Supreme Court to block the Georgia Senate runoff. The move comes days after a federal judge dismissed his earlier lawsuit. The Trump campaign's attorney is...
If I gave you $25,000 today, what would you do? pay 2 years off your mortgage.
Seeking to halt the January 5th runoff races. That's until Georgia's Secretary of State and election officials agree to comply with Georgia election procedures. Wood's earlier lawsuit alleges mail-in ballots and signature checks were not handled properly. He also wants election-related materials to be preserved and to have a forensic examination of one voting machine used on November 3rd. The petition says Wood and others seek to expose coordinated election fraud and prevent it from being repeated in the Senate runoffs. It also states the judge made a mistake by dismissing his earlier suit. Some GOP lawmakers in Pennsylvania are still contesting the state's election results. One of them told NTD his concerns. Our reporter Juliet Song has the details.
A group of Pennsylvania lawmakers are trying to decertify the election result in the state. They say it's because of questions surrounding the election process.
It appears that there were more votes than there are voters.
Zimmerman is referring to a data analysis from some GOP lawmakers. It says the state's data shows over 6.9 million votes were counted this year, but only 6.7 million people voted, so the number doesn't add up. In response, Pennsylvania's Department of State says the analysis is misinformation. A spokesperson says the state doesn't have the total number of voters as of this Monday, as several counties haven't uploaded their data into the system. Pennsylvania cast 20 electoral votes for Biden, and some state lawmakers have introduced a resolution to decertify these votes. But there are challenges. They can't vote on the resolution unless the leader of the House brings up the bill.
We're kind of at the mercy of what the leader does in this case, so that's why we're encouraging to bring up that bill or that resolution.
Zimmerman says the House leader Kerry Benninghoff has been opposed to bringing up the bill. Meanwhile, Zimmerman says he has been getting 2,000 emails a day from constituents who have questions about election integrity.
And there's so many people and very concerned about it. And I think we need to resolve that if we're going to have unity in our country going forward.
The earliest time that lawmakers can vote on the resolution is January 5th. That's one day before Congress meets to count the electoral votes. Juliet Song, NTD News.
President Trump is pushing a new study that supposedly shows almost 300,000 excess votes in battleground states. Here are the details.
President Trump tweeted a link to economist John Lott's new study on election fraud. He writes, 11,350 absentee votes lost to Trump in Georgia, and another 289,000 excess fraudulent votes across Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. The study compares precincts with allegations of fraud to similar precincts with no fraud allegations. The study says in precincts with alleged fraud, Trump's proportion of absentee votes was lower, even when Trump's in-person votes were similar to nearby counties. John Lott says it's suspicious that the shift only happens with absentee ballots, and only when the county line is crossed. According to Lott, the best estimate shows an unusual 7.81% drop in Trump's percentage of the absentee ballots for Fulton County alone, of 11,350 votes, or over 80% of Biden's vote lead in Georgia. Lott's estimates show between 70,000 and 79,000 excess votes in Georgia and Pennsylvania. With the 4 other states, the total grows to as much as 289,000 excess votes. He says his estimates indicate that voter fraud may account for Biden's win in Georgia and Pennsylvania. State election officials, along with the Department of Justice and others, have pushed back against claims of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 election.
A New York Republican is keeping her lead in the nation's last uncalled House race, and it's a close one. Claudia Tenney says she is leading the race by just 29 votes. Tenney's small but widening advantage came after about 1,800 uncounted affidavit ballots were canvassed. Oneida County's completed tally marks the end of counting across the 22nd district. That's nearly 2 months after the general election. The contest won't be officially concluded until early next year, after a ruling on whether some 2,000 contested ballots should be counted or tossed away. A pastor and congressional candidate is urging Americans to take action against alleged election fraud. He says the president can't fight this battle alone and that it's up to the people to preserve their way of life.
Pastor Leon Benjamin ran for a House seat in Virginia's 4th District. He says Americans are facing a We the People moment.
Do not give up. Don't throw in the towel right now. It's not over. Call your legislators. And I know some of you are saying, well, my legislator probably doesn't want to hear from me. It doesn't matter. Call them anyway and tell them, do the right thing on January 6th.
That's the day legislators meet to certify the electors. A protest in the Capitol is taking place on the same day to call on the legislators not to certify a fraudulent election. Benjamin says if you love freedom and care for your country, you need to stand up on January 6th.
This is not a Republican or Democrat thing anymore. This is about our republic. This is about our way of life. And if anyone knows what could happen if it goes the other way, they would be petrified. They should be terrified that our nation could end up going a whole different way.
Benjamin's called what's now taking place in America a battle between freedom and communism. He says he sees it as a spiritual battle between good and evil. Benjamin says people cannot rely on the president to fight this battle alone or expect politicians to act.
Let's not leave the president hanging, okay? Let's not just say, well, you know, he's strong, he's a tough cookie, he can handle the deep state all by himself. No. Don't say it's up to them. No, it's not just up to them. It's up to you.
Benjamin describes this as a crucible moment in history and a turning point. Reporting by Grace Coulter, NTD News.
A spokeswoman for Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden says the counting of electoral votes is merely a formality. Biden's pick for White House press secretary Jen Psaki said Biden would be sworn in, quote, regardless of whatever antics anyone is up to on January 6th, referring to next week's joint session of Congress to count electoral votes. Some 15 Republican Congress members plan to object to electoral votes during the session. Senator Josh Hawley also recently pledged to object, becoming the first from his chamber. Objections from at least one lawmaker from each chamber trigger a debate and vote. The unprecedented cyber attack on U.S. government agencies reported this month may have started earlier than last spring, as previously believed. That's according to a U.S. senator involved in cybersecurity.
Russia's alleged hacking of U.S. government agencies may have started earlier than last spring, as previously thought. That's according to Democrat Mark Warner, who's vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. The attack, only made public earlier this month, used the U.S. tech company SolarWinds as a springboard to penetrate government networks for months, as well as critical infrastructure entities and private companies. Once inside, hackers were able to monitor internal emails at some of the top federal agencies, including the Treasury. Warner told Reuters there was no evidence that classified government secrets had been compromised, but
it doesn't matter.
Investigations are still ongoing.
We're still getting information from classified sources. I'm talking to people on the private sector side. I think it's safe to say that it may have started even earlier than March or April, and that the initial burrowing in may have started earlier. That the collection period, did start the calendar year 2020.
Senior U.S. officials and lawmakers have accused Russia of being behind the attack, a charge the Kremlin denies, while U.S. President Donald Trump has suggested China might be responsible. Whichever actor is to blame, Warner said gaps in U.S. and international law made it harder to track and crack down on security breaches.
During the Obama administration, U.S. taxpayer money went to a group affiliated with al-Qaeda. That's according to a recent Senate report.